we all know that the BRICS had their meeting, and so we need to talk about that and what came out with it. And I'm going to show you what really has me more concerned, frankly, than anything else. The BRICS summit, attended by more than 20 leaders, including Chinese President Xi Jinping, Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi, and Turkey's Tayyip Erdogan, has shown the depth of Russia's relations beyond the Western world. So when we cut them off from the global payment system, the SWIFT system that we control, right, we thought that that was really going to tie them up, and clearly it didn't, and it goes even further than that. But here's the BRICS summit. After last year's expansion, BRICS grouping now accounts for about 30% of the global GDP. That's a lot of power. Nearly half of the global population and 1/5 of global trade. So what we're really seeing is this power and this influence shift. And I know everybody wants the unit or the BRICS currency to come in and take over. And we're going to talk about that in just a couple of minutes. Because really what we're seeing here is that that power is shifting. And this PowerPoint is working really weird. But okay, we'll just deal with it. But Xi has undercut the West by negotiating a truce in China's long feud with India. So this is what you need to know. India has kind of been straddling the fence between being present and part of groups that are trying to undermine China's influence and growth in influence globally, but also they're a founding member of the BRICS, which is about promoting that growth. So they've been straddling both parts or both sides of the world, and that power is shifting. It is a very, very, very big deal that Russia was able to negotiate this truce, right? Because really what that does is it shifts the power more toward the BRICS nation, and it shows the U.S. being ineffective. So that's really a big deal. At the BRICS summit in Russia this week, China's leader Xi Jinping and India's prime minister, shook hands for the first time in 5 years. The symbolic moment, and there's a lot of symbolic moments that happened at the BRICS meeting, but the symbolic moment came after a deal was struck to resolve that long-standing feud between the Asian superpowers. But I think, and I agree with this completely, China's bigger ambition and target is the Taiwan issue. So many think that we're already in World War III in cyberspace. We're certainly seeing a lot of wars break out all around the world, whether they're proxy wars or not proxy wars. I think they're more proxy wars. But Taiwan is a huge issue between the U.S. and China. I think that this could definitely be an overt, because apparently many believe that covertly World War III has already started. But I think that if there was a conflict around Taiwan between the U.S. and China, there's your World War III. They would like to ensure that India does not react to the Taiwan issue so sensitively, right? So if they've got India on their side, then quite honestly, then China has more power to go after Taiwan. So we're going to see what happens with that. But this is a major power shift. I think it really matters. Even here, Wall Street and tech royalty, because just follow the money. It's all about the money. Allegiance happens that way. But Wall Street and tech royalty fly to Saudi Arabia amid Mideast war. And Saudi Arabia has still not made an absolute commitment to the BRICS. Even though they've been accepted into the BRICS, they haven't really picked up that mantle. So they're also playing both sides, the West and the East. Who's going to win? We'll see where that power shift leads us. But once the clear winner evolves, that's when you're going to see these other countries, whether it's Saudi Arabia, etc., fly to one or the other. And my guess is they're going to fly to the BRICS. Growth in the portion, what you're looking at is growth in the portion of emerging market funds with Saudi exposure, but that has stalled, right? So what is Saudi Arabia doing? They're doing a big push right now with Wall Street. But they're straddling both sides of this fence. So I find this to be really, really interesting as Saudi Arabia declines to make a full commitment to BRICS. But there's a tease. So where is that investment going to come from? You can certainly see how much it's grown since 2015. The BRICS nations agree to boost trade, financial settlement, in local currencies. Okay, so this takes us down to the BRICS currency, which there has been nothing formal announced. I don't really think that they're ready to, but I want to talk more about this. Through the Kazan Declaration signed yesterday at the 16th BRICS Summit in Russia, they have mandated finance ministers and central bank governors from member countries to explore various options aimed at easing economic exchanges within the bloc. And I would honestly say that piece within the bloc is critically important to understand, because they're not talking about a universal currency. They're not really talking about the world reserve currency. And again, what they are talking about is a basket of currencies making trade amongst themselves easier. That's where it all goes down, and they're still doing these studies. So it doesn't seem to me, and hey, look, do I think they're really going to reveal everything to us? Of course not. They're not going to do that. So maybe there'll be a surprise that comes out. But what we're really looking at here with CBDCs and the new currencies and the world reserve currency, it still seems to me that the SDR is the most likely option, because while that too is a basket of currencies, it is a basket that can include every single currency, not just a small basket of currencies enabling trade partners to trade with their own currencies. So there was no big bombshell, though they did come out with a currency. I'm going to talk about that in a second. And by the way, even when they're using the term backing, I want to be so crystal clear on this. If you can't convert it into that underlying gold, it's not backed. So all of these asset-backed digital coins that they're creating, all of these asset-backed, I want them convertible into it, because otherwise, how do you know that it's real? And how do you know that you really own anything? Because it's just a contract. You see what I'm saying here? This is really, really important, because they're using pegging and backing interchangeably, and that's simply not really how it works. You know, it's just like taxation and confiscation. Those are two different words, but they mean the same thing, right? But backing and pegging are two different things, because pegging just goes to the price, and the price is easy to manipulate in terms of all of this kind of stuff wherever you live in the whole world. So I want to be really clear about that. But the BRICS unveiled a symbolic banknote, okay, pushes for local currency trade amid the dollar debate. Reports have suggested that the BRICS banknote could be called the unit, with backing possibly coming from gold and member currencies. However, these remain speculative, and no official announcements have been made regarding the launch of a BRICS currency. And I keep watching. So even if they did come out with the unit, everything I read, it's non-convertible. So it's not really backed, even though they want to say that it's backed. You can't convert it. And I'm sorry, but if you're looking at the members of the BRICS Union, do you really see any country that takes particular care to promote the individual public? No. And I'm not even saying, oh, look at the U.S. is better, because it's not, right? There is no government, no central bank. That's why we have to come together in a global union, sound money movement. Just convert this stuff that they control into this stuff that the whole world needs because it's used in every single sector of the global economy, right? You want to have more rights back. We've been losing those rights for so long, and they do it slowly and slowly and slowly so that you don't notice it. But you better have a foundation in sound money. And if we can even get 3% of the 8.4 billion people that live in this world to convert their fiat government controlled fiat money into sound money, we've got a shot, I believe. We've got a shot at a seat at the table. And if I'm sitting at that seat representing you, I'm going to be calling for convertible into gold. Doesn't mean that you have to do it, but it means that they need to know, meaning they, governments and central banks, need to know that if you wanted to, you could. Because gold requires fiscal responsibility. Can you please tell me one government that wants to be fiscally responsible? Even when they vow. And we just saw gold backed the Zimbabwe gold. And hey, they're now talking about forcing that as the only currency to be used. But you can't convert it, and it's digital. It's nothing. And with that 44% overnight devaluation, if it was really backed, you couldn't do it. Couldn't do it. And that's why they can't back a currency until we go through that hyperinflation. Period. I'm sorry, I'm putting my neck on the line here, but I know history. And they've got to burn off all of this massive amount of debt because that is how money is created in this system. So they've got to go into a new system because there's no purchasing power left. And therefore, they have to get rid of all of that debt so they can create more. Because the only other thing besides debt that I've really heard them talk about to justify the creation of this garbage are purchases. Purchases. So instead of taking on debt in order to purchase something, you choosing to make that purchase, you pushing that button creates new money. Please tell me how much value that money would have if it takes no effort and no time to create it, but you choose to purchase it into. So it's either via purchases or it's via debt. And if it's via debt, then they have to get rid of this mountain, this unpayable mountain. Because as soon as they put gold as a component of a currency, guess what? It fixes the debt where it is. And we just saw from Zimbabwe, just saying it doesn't make it so. So this is the battle. And I'm hoping that you can join me in this battle. Because every day I look at myself and I say, if not me, who? And if not now, when? And this fight is for our children and our children's children and all the children to come. And we've got to do this because if we don't, who do you think is going to? And I know people think, well, I'm just one person. What can I do? And you're right. It's like, I'm just one person. What can I do? Well, there's nothing I can do except if 3% of the 8.4 billion people that come out, we can do a lot. We can take our power back because there are a lot more of us than there are of them. So why not force the issue? We have nothing to lose, right? But the banknote, which features the flags of Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa, symbolizes the collective ambitions of these nations to explore alternatives to the U.S. dollar in cross-border transactions. Because that's what it means to be the world reserve currency. It means that if you are a government or a corporation or an individual to go outside of your borders, you had, up until really 2000, you had no choice but to do it with U.S. dollars. No choice at all. Well, that's been shifting for a while, right? Like I said, it was already in 2000 that foreign governments no longer bought enough of our treasury bonds, our government's debt, and we had to start buying that back ourselves. right? That's what a third world country does. And it wasn't positioned as anything good until 2009. And then that became suddenly what was you didn't talk about because you didn't want people to know it became a great thing. What a great strategy. Meh, meh, meh. Nope, I don't think so. And it's definitely not a strategy that I take on, but it's symbolic. And it's just about a small union that cannot be the world's reserve currency. The SDR can. But don't worry about it, because we look forward to the report that will be given by our finance ministers and central bank governors on the use of the local currencies and international trade, financial transactions between the BRICS members and their trading partners. So they can expand that out, but you're still not going to get full global coverage. The SDR, the IMF, International Monetary Fund, which all of the members, there's 189 members out of the 196 countries in the world that are all members of the IMF with unelected officials, treasury secretaries, and central bank chiefs. So they know each other. They get together all the time. So my point is that I personally am not worried about our loss of status from the BRICS. That's been coming about for a very long time. But we have to come together in a global movement, a global sound money movement. I'll be in Australia in just a couple of weeks. I'm really looking forward to it. So shout out to anybody from Australia's there. Hopefully we'll get to meet in person. Let me know that when I'm there. But we've got to come together and do this. Now, we're looking at gold that hit another new high today, right? Even though it is still severely below its fundamental value. And a lot of it is driven by dollar diversification and geopolitics and really this power shift that we've been talking about with the BRICS nations, because really they're taking their power back. Shouldn't we be doing the same thing? And if we all come together, I mean, we're bigger than the BRICS. We're bigger. We need the public that is in each one of these countries all around the world to say, no, we're taking our power back. And that's what I feel so strongly about it. That's where I put most of my efforts because it's so critically important. But when we try to relate the moves in gold this year to traditional financial and economic variables, interest rates, the dollar, the relationships have broken down. Now, I really wanted to talk about this because what does he say here? When we try to relate to the moves in gold this year to traditional financial and economic variables, guess what? The real tradition is gold. That and silver. That tradition goes back 6,000 years. The dollar's tradition only goes back 111 years, right? But you weren't born 6,000 years ago. So you were born into this system. And you've been taught since the day you were born that this system will benefit you, that this is the one that we're working on, that central banks and governments have your best interest at heart. It's a lie. This is a lie. And how did they do that? They transition us by keeping us keeping the system as close to what we get used to so that we feel like it's normal and traditional as possible. So this, which is a 1 ounce gold piece, turned into, well, let me just use this, a gold certificate, a certificate. And then this certificate turned into this bill. And even though they look almost identical, so we don't think anything has changed, everything has changed. That's why you just go right down to the original. Go back to what's really traditional. And that's sound money, gold and silver. There's a reason it's called sound money, and that's because it holds your purchasing power over time. And what do? We work. We've got our time and our energy that we're working for money. You want to work for this that by design loses its purchasing power and is taxed and taxed and taxed like crazy? Or do you want to work for this that holds its value over time? And part of the strategy is to recoup any taxable event, any fees, any costs. So all you need to do is scan the QR code, click the link, or give us a call at 833-GLD-ZANG and create your sound money strategy. If you haven't done it yet, you definitely need to get it in place. If you haven't fully executed it yet, get that done. Get it done ASAP, because frankly, we're running out of time. It is that simple. Chief among them, going back to the reasons why gold is soaring, chief among them is Russia's ability to maintain trading relationships and grow even after the exclusion of its major banks from SWIFT, a global financial messaging service that's controlled by the U.S. That goes all the way back to what they engineered between India and China. That goes back to a shift in power. We showed our hand. We showed the world that we are bullies. And if you don't do what we want you to do, then we're going to just kick you out. Wah, 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 go play on another team. But now there's a team that's growing, that is growing in power to pull power from us. I don't think it'll be the global reserve currency, but we can't take this lightly either, because there are new teams that are forming that have a level of power, especially with the level of gold that they are accumulating. And after all, Fort Knox, we can't audit our gold. And even if we did, even if we saw it in the vault, all of the different contracts for leasing out, etc., that have been going on forever and ever and ever, we don't really know who owns that gold, even if it's all there. But he considered this a secular move that can be attributed to two fundamental drivers. Number one, the diversification away from the dollar as the only global reserve currency, which, as I said, that's been happening since really 2000. And the other is a slow diversification away from the dollar payment system. So the big threat, in my opinion, on the BRICS is the underlying plumbing of the global financial system, which SWIFT seems to be like struggling to stay relevant, whereas the BRICS nations are building that brick by brick by brick. When that system is fully formed and they unleash it, that's really where I believe in the U.S. we are going to see so much inflation as all of those unnecessary dollars that are held in reserves around the world come back to us. Or they go to the substitution fund at the IMF and are converted into SDR denominated instruments, right? There's still a lot of dollars coming back to the U.S. And it will be here. I am such a firm believer in this. It will be here in the U.S. that we will feel the greatest shift in the standard of living, because we are the ones that have enjoyed this huge benefit of being the world reserve currency and creating a fictitious false market for our dollars. And what's really happening is that the BRICS is undermining that whole system. And I'm not saying whether they should or they shouldn't. Everything evolves. And I'm not saying that we shouldn't evolve with it. But I am saying that the direction that I see everything evolving into means that we are under the thumb of a one world government. Whether they make it look local in all of these countries. But you know what? If we're going to have a one world government and a one world currency, guess what? We already have that. But this gold and silver are not under anybody's control. They are a free market item. The spot markets, sure they are, because they can create as much gold and silver as they want to. But in reality, there's a finite amount, and all the gold that exists in all the world that's ever been mined fits into an Olympic-sized swimming pool. That's it. That's it. So the central banks are gobbling it up. You need to be gobbling it up, but it needs to be based on what you're trying to accomplish. Gold and silver, sound money, that's the foundation of your strategy. We come together in community and we all row in the same direction. Let's do that. And I know we can. So until next we meet, please be safe out there, and I'll see you next Tuesday. Bye-bye.